Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a specific topic, sparked by your interest, dig into the sources, and really try to get you up to speed quickly.
That's the goal. Giving you the inside track.
And today, we're diving into something that's been, well, pretty wild online recently. We got some notes from one of you, dated just May 20th, 2025, detailing this huge viral conspiracy theory.
Right, the one connecting Vice President J.D. Vance and the death of Pope Francis.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack this. Where did it start? What are the key pieces? And, what's the bigger picture here?
Yeah, understand the context that let something like this catch fire.
It's been called the ultimate meme, which is quite something. And it all stems from some genuinely strange timing around a meeting right before the Pope passed away. Okay, let's get into the details. The notes say the spark was this meeting, April 20th, 2025, Vance and Pope Francis at the Casa Santa Marta.
And initially, the Vatican press office, they described it as, pretty standard stuff. A brief meeting, Easter greetings, routine.
Okay, diplomatic basics. But here's the thing. The notes stress that Pope Francis looked visibly unwell during this meeting.
Yeah, that's a key detail.
And this is the really striking part, the very next day, he died. The timing alone is, well, it's noticeable.
It definitely is. But the bit that really seems to have poured fuel on the fire, according to these notes, is the backstory to the meeting itself.
Ah, right. That Pope Francis had actually turned down a meeting with Vance earlier during that Rome visit.
Correct. He initially declined, and then suddenly he agreed to this short encounter.
Which the notes call bizarre. You can see why, right? That sequence. Refusal, then a sudden yes, the Pope looks sick, then he dies the next day.
That's the kind of pattern, or perceived pattern, that just invites speculation. It creates this almost narrative possibility of cause and effect, even if there's no actual link.
Yeah, fertile ground for theories to sprout.
Precisely. And the internet, as the notes show, just ran with it. Instantly, memes started popping up everywhere. That's what happens with ambiguity and speed, doesn't it? These ultimate memes spread like wildfire, often skipping any critical thought.
And some of those memes were pretty intense. The notes mentioned Vance depicted as death itself, or that really severe judge character from Blood Meridian.
Even the Antichrist, apparently.
Yeah, it's got that dark humor element, but like the notes say, it's also pretty disrespectful, obviously.
And it's really important we stress this, just like the notes do.
Yeah.
The theory itself is, well, it's baseless. There's no evidence. The timing is just coincidence.
Right, pure coincidence.
But to get why it resonated with some people, why it got traction, we kind of need to look deeper. Back into history a bit.
Okay, and this is where your notes bring up something really fascinating. This long, long history of anti-Catholic feeling in America. Wow, those quotes you pulled out are powerful. Arthur Schlesinger Sr. calling it the deepest bias in American history, and John Higham describing it as the most luxurious, tenacious tradition of paranoid agitation. That's strong language.
It really is. It points to this historical suspicion, this prejudice against Catholicism that's been around for ages in the U.S., often tied up with worries about immigration, or this idea that Catholics are loyal to a foreign power, the Pope, over America.
And these aren't just abstract fears, right? The notes mention the Know-Nothing movement back in the 1850s.
Exactly, the Know-Nothings. Their whole platform was basically built on being anti-immigrant and anti-Catholic.
It was central to their identity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those same kinds of anxieties, maybe in different clothes, still pop up. Think about the stuff thrown at Al Smith or JFK during their campaigns.
Right, the whole they'll take orders from the Pope line. That fear seems incredibly persistent.
It really does. So when Higham uses a phrase like paranoid agitation, he's tapping into something deep-seated, this long-running anxiety.
Okay, so that historical context is crucial. And here's another layer the notes point out, which is kind of mind-bending. This Vance conspiracy has been grabbed onto by people on both political extremes, but for totally different reasons.
Yeah, that's a really interesting twist, isn't it?
It is. How does that work?
Well, the notes suggest that, for example, progressive critics have shared the memes and the story, maybe not because they believe Vance somehow caused the Pope's death, but more to highlight what they see as hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy in Vance's religious positioning, you mean? Especially given the Pope initially didn't want to meet him.
Precisely. So the Pope's reluctance, followed by his death, becomes a kind of political tool for them, a way to critique Vance.
So using the conspiracy narrative itself as ammunition in a political fight, regardless of its truth, that feels very modern, using online narratives as weapons.
It definitely shows how these things get absorbed and repurposed in today's political environment. And it underlines that this Vance thing, it's not happening in isolation. The Vatican itself, as the notes mention, has always been a magnet for speculation.
Right. Always conspiracies swirling around the Vatican. Smallest country, oldest institution, priceless treasures.
It practically invites mystery, doesn't it? The location alone, built over Nero's circus, where early Christians were martyred. History is just layered there.
And then you've got the Vatican Apostolic Archives, used to be called the Secret Archives. That name alone.
Yeah, secret archives definitely sparks the imagination. Hidden knowledge, conspiracies.
Although the notes do clarify that the reality is probably more mundane, right? Mostly administrative stuff, letters, records. Important, yes, but maybe not hidden Templar maps.
The reality is usually less exciting than the myth, but the myth is powerful. And the notes give an example of how far these things can go, the chronovisor theory.
Oh yeah, the supposed time viewer machine hidden in the Vatican.
Exactly. Something the Vatican has never, definitively debunked in great detail, which just keeps the speculation alive. Pure fodder for conspiracy theorists.
So this whole Vance thing, as weird as it sounds on the surface, kind of fits into this much bigger, centuries-old pattern of Vatican speculation and suspicion.
It does. It's a modern instance tapping into older veins of thought. And ultimately, as the notes wrap up, what this specific event really highlights is this complex relationship the public often has with the Catholic Church.
And specifically, maybe with J.D. Vance's relationship to the church as well.
Yeah, it's a mix of those historical biases we talked about, current political fights, and just the inherent, you know, mystique or maybe suspicion surrounding the institution itself.
Okay, let's try and sum this up then. This J.D. Vance Pope Francis death conspiracy, this ultimate meme, it really blew up because of that incredibly tight timing.
Right. The meeting happening, the Pope seeming unwell, that weird detail about him first saying no, then yes to the meeting.
And then his death, bam, the next day.
And that timing, even though it looks like pure coincidence causally, it tapped into that deep history of anti-Catholic feeling in America we discussed.
That deepest bias Schlesinger mentioned, it provided a sort of historical resonance, even if subconscious for many people.
And then there's that layer of irony, how different political factions grabbed this baseless theory and used it for their own ends.
Which really tells you something about how narratives work today, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It shows how existing biases and political goals can just latch onto events, twist them, amplify them.
So a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Think about how these things connect. How do old, deep-seated historical biases, when mixed with the speed and echo chamber effects of modern media, create and spread narratives? Even narratives built purely on coincidence, like this one seems to be.
Yeah, it makes you really consider the power of suggestion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And how much our own existing beliefs shape how we even see events unfolding in front of us.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.